There is a kingdom beneath the ground that no one was meant to find again. It sits in darkness, in caverns and tunnels and vast underground chambers where rain falls eternally from stone ceilings and the light of luminous fungi casts everything in pale blue and gentle green. The kingdom is called Hallownest, and it is dead, or dying, or something between those two states that does not have a proper name. The bugs who built it, who lived in it, who loved it, are mostly gone now, taken by infection, or driven away by despair, or simply worn down by the long, slow process of a civilization coming undone. What remains are ruins and echoes and a handful of survivors who stay because they have nowhere else to go, or because they have forgotten how to leave, or because something in them refuses to abandon a place that was once, however briefly, beautiful. Tonight, we're going to talk about the saddest things in Hallownest. Not the battles, not the bosses, not the mechanics or the map or the secrets you might have missed on your first playthrough. We're going to talk about the small quiet tragedies, the details that sit in the background and wait for you to notice them, the stories that the game tells not through cutscenes or dialogue boxes, but through a nail left beside a lake, a song that changes over time, a father who does something terrible to his children because he cannot think of anything else to do. These are the facts that stay with you after you put the controller down, the ones that surface at odd moments, the ones that make Hollow Knight not just a great game, but a genuinely sad one, a game that understands grief and loneliness, and the particular kind of sorrow that comes from watching something you love fall apart and being unable to stop it. You're here to let these stories carry you to sleep. That is what this is for. If your eyes are already heavy, if the day has worn you down and you just need something quiet and gentle to listen to while you drift off, then this is exactly right. Let your breathing slow. Let your body find whatever position feels most like rest. You do not need to stay awake for all of this. You do not need to remember every detail. Just let the words wash over you. Let the sadness of Hallownest become something soft and distant. A story happening somewhere far below the surface, in caverns you will never visit, among bugs whose names you might forget by morning. That is fine. That is what sleep scripts are for. Let go whenever you are ready. The kingdom will still be there. The saddest thing in Hollow Knight might be the thing you never see directly. The thing that happened before the game begins. In the deepest place in all of Hallownest, a place called the Abyss. The Abyss is at the very bottom of the kingdom, below everything else. A vast dark void where something ancient and formless lives. Something the game calls the Void. It is here that the Pale King, the ruler of Hallownest, committed what might be the worst act in the entire game, an act that defines everything that follows, an act that the game never shows you in full, but whose evidence is scattered everywhere if you know where to look. The Pale King needed a vessel. He needed a being that was completely empty, completely hollow, a container with no mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry suffering. He needed this vessel because Hallownest was dying, because the Radiance, the forgotten god of the Moth tribe, was spreading an infection through the kingdom, a plague of orange light that turned bugs into mindless, violent husks, that erased their personalities and their memories and their ability to be anything other than extensions of the Radiance's desperate will to be remembered. The Pale King's solution was to create a being so empty that the Radiance could be sealed inside it without finding any crack, any thought, any feeling to exploit. And to create this being, the Pale King and the White Lady, his queen, had children. Not one child, not 10, Thousands of children born of a god and imbued with void, each one meant to be tested, and each one that failed the test discarded. The test was simple and terrible. The children were thrown into the abyss. Those that were empty enough, hollow enough, would survive. Those that were not would die, and almost all of them died. If you descend into the abyss late in the game, after you've collected both halves of the King's Soul charm, you can see them. The shells of dead vessels, hundreds of them piled on top of each other, climbing over each other, their small broken bodies forming drifts and mounds in the darkness. They look like you, like the night, because they are you, or they were meant to be you, or they are what you would have been if you had not somehow climbed out and escaped. Each one of those shells was a child. Each one was born, was tested, was found wanting, and was left to die in the dark. The Pale King watched this happen. He stood at the top of the abyss and watched his children die, watched them fall and break and pile up in the darkness below, and he kept going, kept creating more, kept testing them, kept discarding the ones that failed, because he believed that no cost was too great to save his kingdom. That phrase appears in the game, carved into surfaces in the Pale King's own spaces, no cost too great. It is the motto of a ruler who has decided that the ends justify any means, that a kingdom is worth more than the lives of its children, that love for a nation can coexist with the murder of innocents if the nation's survival depends on it. The Pale King is not presented as a monster, not exactly. He is presented as someone who made a choice that destroyed him, a choice he could not take back, a choice whose consequences he could not escape. Evidence suggests he died in his sleep in the White Palace, possibly from despair, possibly from the weight of what he had done. His small body found on his throne with his crown fallen beside him. Let your shoulders release whatever tension they are holding. Let the muscles in your face go soft. The story of the abyss is the foundation of everything in Hollow Knight, the original sin from which all other sadness flows. A father killed his children to save his kingdom, and the kingdom died anyway. That is the central tragedy, and everything else grows from it like roots from the buried seed. The one child the Pale King chose, the one vessel he believed was perfect, was the Hollow Knight. And the Hollow Knight story is perhaps the saddest individual story in the entire game, because the Hollow Knight was not hollow. They were not empty. They were not the perfect vessel the Pale King needed them to be. They had an idea instilled, a thought, a feeling, something that made them not quite empty enough, not quite hollow enough, not quite the flawless container that the plan required. And that tiny imperfection, that microscopic crack in their supposed emptiness, was enough to doom everything. There is a memory you can access in the White Palace, a scene that plays out in dream, showing the Pale King leading the young Hollow Knight away from the abyss. The Hollow Knight is small in this memory, a child being led by a parent, and as they walk away from the darkness where their siblings died, the Hollow Knight looks back. Just once. A single glance over their shoulder at the abyss, at the place where thousands of their siblings lie dead. That look is the crack. That moment of awareness, of recognition, of something that might be grief or curiosity or connection to the siblings left behind, that is the flaw that will eventually destroy Hallownest. The Pale King saw it. He must have seen it, and he continued anyway, either because he had no more children to test, or because he could not bear to discard another one, or because he convinced himself that this tiny flaw would not matter. He was wrong. The Pale King raised the Hollow Knight. He trained them. He spent time with them. And despite every effort to remain distant, to treat the Hollow Knight as a tool rather than a child, something grew between them. The Hollow Knight began to see the Pale King as a father. They developed feelings, thoughts, attachments, the very things they were created to lack. The Hollow Knight loved the Pale King, and that love was the weapon the Radiance used to break free. When the Radiance was sealed inside the Hollow Knight, she found that crack, that tiny flaw, that capacity for feeling, and she exploited it, slowly breaking through the containment, leaking infection out into Hallownest, turning the Hollow Knight's eternal duty into eternal torture. When you finally reach the Hollow Knight at the end of the game, chained inside the Temple of the Black Egg, what you find is not a boss in the traditional sense. What you find is a sibling in agony. The Hollow Knight is leaking infection, their body damaged, their movements jerky and pained. And during the fight, the Hollow Knight does something that tells you everything you need to know about who they are and what they have endured. They stab themselves. They take their own nail and drive it into their own body repeatedly, trying to damage themselves, trying to weaken themselves, trying to help you defeat them. The Hollow Knight is not fighting you because they want to. They are fighting you because the infection inside them compels it. But in the moments when they can exert their own will, when the being they actually are breaks through the Radiance's control, they try to end their own suffering. They try to help you kill them. They have been chained in darkness for years, enduring constant pain, watching through infected eyes as the kingdom they were meant to save crumbles around them, unable to do anything about it, unable to speak, unable to ask for help, unable to die. And when you finally arrive, when someone finally comes who might be able to end this, the Hollow Knight's response is to stab themselves so that you can finish the job faster. Let your breathing become something you do not have to think about. Let your body handle it on its own, each breath arriving when it needs to, each exhale carrying away a little more of the day's weight. The Hollow Knight suffered for years in silence, alone in the dark, holding back a god with a container that was never strong enough. That kind of endurance, that kind of suffering is almost impossible to imagine, and the worst part is that no one ever thanked them for it. No one ever acknowledged the sacrifice. The Pale King was dead. The White Lady had sealed herself away. The dreamers slept. The kingdom fell. And the Hollow Knight just kept holding on, kept enduring, kept suffering, because that was what they were made to do, even though what they were made to do was slowly destroying them. Myla is a miner. That is all she is, really. A small bug working in the Crystal Peak, chipping away at crystals, singing to herself while she works. When you first meet her, she's cheerful, friendly, happy to see another bug in these dangerous tunnels. She sings a little song, a nursery rhyme about burying her family, and she laughs about it, treats it as just a funny tune she knows, something to pass the time while she mines. She tells you about the crystals, about how they seem to hum and whisper, about how beautiful they are. She invites you to grab a pick and join in. She stutters slightly when she talks, a small endearing detail that makes her feel real, that makes her feel like a person rather than a game character. Myla is one of the most human characters in Hollow Knight, and she has maybe 30 lines of dialogue in total, and she is going to break your heart. Because Myla gets infected, not all at once, not in a dramatic cutscene, not in a way that announces itself as important. It happens gradually, over the course of the game, in a way that you might not even notice if you do not return to Crystal Peak to check on her. The first time you come back after progressing through the game, Myla is still mining, still singing, but something is different. Her voice is shakier, Her dialogue is less coherent. She mentions the crystals whispering to her, and now it does not sound charming, it sounds concerning. She keeps mining, keeps singing, but the song is sadder now, the melody more mournful, the words about burying her family carrying a weight they did not carry before. The next time you visit, Myla has stopped mining. She's standing still, staring at nothing, her pickaxe idle. Her dialogue has changed again, become more confused, more fragmented. She talks about light, about something calling to her, about not being able to remember things she used to know. If you use the dream nail on her at this stage, her thoughts are a jumble of fear and confusion, and something that is not her, something that is pushing its way in, something that whispers about killing the empty one, about ending the vessel that stands before her. Myla is still in there, somewhere, fighting against the infection, but she is losing. And then, the last time you visit, Myla is gone. Not gone physically. She's still standing there in the crystal peak, but the bug you met, the cheerful miner with the stutter and the nursery rhyme, and the enthusiasm for pretty crystals, that bug is gone. What remains is an infected husk, orange light glowing in her eyes, hostile, attacking you on sight. Myla has become one of the hundreds of infected enemies you have been killing throughout the game. The same kind of mindless, aggressive husk that populates every area of Hallownest. The only difference is that you knew this one. You talked to her. She sang for you. She invited you to mine with her, and now she is trying to kill you, and there is nothing you can do about it. You cannot cure her. You cannot save her. You can kill her, or you can walk away, and either choice feels wrong, and neither choice changes anything. If you strike her, she cries out, not the standard enemy sound, but something different, something that sounds like pain, like the last trace of who she was registering what is happening to her. Myla's story is not important to the plot of Hollow Knight. She's not connected to the Pale King's plan or the Radiance's infection in any meaningful narrative way. She's just a miner who was in the wrong place. She got infected like thousands of other bugs, lost herself like thousands of other bugs, became a husk like thousands of other bugs. But because you met her before it happened, because you talked to her and heard her sing and learned her name, her infection feels different from all the others. It feels personal. It feels like losing someone you know. And that is exactly the point. Every infected husk you killed on your way through Hallownest was someone once. Every one of them had a name and a voice and maybe a song they liked to sing. Myla just happens to be the one you got to meet before the infection took her, and that is what makes her story one of the saddest in the game. Let the weight of your body press you deeper into wherever you are lying. Let gravity do the work. You do not have to hold yourself up anymore. You do not have to hold anything up. Just rest and let the story continue around you like weather, like something happening at a distance that you can hear but do not need to respond to. Quirrell is a wandering scholar who arrives in Hallownest around the same time you do, drawn back to the kingdom by something he cannot quite remember. He is kind, thoughtful, genuinely curious about the ruins he's exploring, one of the few friendly voices you encounter in the entire game. He appears at various points throughout your journey, always studying something, always fascinated by whatever he has found, always happy to see you. Quirrell is the closest thing the knight has to a friend in Hallownest, and his story ends at a lake. But first, his story begins with forgetting. Quirrell was once the student and assistant of Monomon the teacher, one of the 3 dreamers who sealed themselves in eternal sleep to maintain the prison holding the Hollow Knight. Before Monomon entered her sleep, she gave Quirrell a mask, a gift that served two purposes. The mask protected Quirrell from the infection, keeping him safe in a kingdom that was slowly going mad. But the mask also made him forget. It erased his memories of Monomon, of his time in Hallownest, of his purpose, of everything. Monomon did this deliberately, as an act of mercy. She knew that one day someone would need to kill her to break the seal on the Hollow Knight's prison. She knew that her death was built into the plan, that it was necessary, that it would eventually come, and she did not want Quirrell to have to live with that knowledge. She did not want her student to spend years knowing that his teacher, his mentor, the person he cared about most, would need to die, and that there was nothing he could do to prevent it. So she took his memories. She gave him the gift of forgetting, the mercy of not knowing. Quirrell wandered for years after that, protected by the mask but lost, travelling through lands beyond Hallownest with no memory of where he came from, or why he felt a pull towards something he could not name. Eventually that pull brought him back. He returned to Hallownest without understanding why, began exploring the ruins, began encountering fragments of familiarity, places that felt like they should mean something, feelings he could not explain. And slowly, as the game progresses, as you encounter him in different parts of Hallownest, Quirrell begins to remember. Pieces come back, connections form. The mask's protection begins to weaken as its purpose draws closer to completion. When you reach Monomon's archive in Fog Canyon and prepare to fight Umu, the giant jellyfish guardian, Quirrell appears. He helps you in the fight, breaking Umu's protective membrane so you can damage it, and in doing so, in returning to this place, in standing before the dreamer he once served, Quirrell remembers everything. He remembers Monomon. He remembers his duty. He remembers what is about to happen. After you defeat Monomon and break her seal, Quirrell speaks, and what he says is devastating in its gentleness. He talks about being grateful for the forgetting, grateful that Monomon spared him the years of grief and anticipation, grateful that he did not have to watch the clock tick down toward the death of someone he loved. He understands now why she took his memories. He understands the kindness of it, and understanding does not make the loss easier, but it makes it bearable, or at least it gives it a shape he can hold. After Monomon's death, Quirrell can be found one final time, sitting by the Blue Lake, one of the most beautiful and peaceful locations in all of Hallownest, a vast underground lake of blue water, tranquil and still. Quirrell is sitting on the shore, his nail planted in the ground beside him, looking out over the water. He speaks about feeling his age now, about the mask's protection fading and the weight of years settling onto him. He speaks about feeling at peace, about his journey being complete, about having seen the world twice over and being thankful for both viewings. He says that with the deed complete he begins to feel his age. He says the world is a vast and wondrous place. He says he is thankful he was able to witness it again. And then, if you leave and come back, Quirrell is gone. His nail remains planted upright in the earth beside the lake. But Quirrell himself has vanished. The game never tells you what happened. It never shows you a body or plays a death animation or gives you a notification. Quirrell is simply gone, and his nail is still there, a weapon laid down by someone who no longer needs it. The prevailing interpretation among players is that Quirrell walked into the lake, that he chose to end his life peacefully now that his purpose was fulfilled and Monomon's mask was no longer sustaining him. Others believe he simply walked away, left Hallownest for good, went to find whatever comes after a completed journey. The game leaves it deliberately ambiguous, and that ambiguity is part of what makes it so affecting. You do not get closure, you do not get a final answer, you just get an empty shore and a nail in the ground, and the memory of a kind, curious bug who called you friend in a kingdom where friendship was almost extinct. Let your thoughts become quieter, less distinct, more like the surface of that lake, still and reflective and undisturbed. Quirrell found his peace. Whatever form it took, wherever he went, the last thing he felt was contentment. There is something gentle in that, something worth holding as you drift towards sleep. Cloth is a warrior, a cicada who came to Hallownest looking for a fight worthy of dying in. She carries a club made from the tooth of an ancient beast, and she is brave, enthusiastic, and completely sincere in her desire to find a glorious death in battle. When you first meet her, she is excited, eager, ready to test herself against whatever Hallownest can throw at her. She speaks of grand battles and heroic last stands, of going down fighting, of earning a death that means something. And if you listen carefully to what she says, if you pay attention to why she wants to die in battle, you learn about Nola. Nola was someone Cloth loved. The game does not specify the exact nature of their relationship, but Cloth speaks of Nola with the kind of tender grief that suggests something deep and personal, a bond that defined who she was and how she understood the world. Nola is dead. Cloth does not say how or when, just that Nola is gone and that Cloth wants to join her. The warrior's death Cloth seeks is not about glory or honour in the abstract, it is about reunion. Cloth wants to die in battle, because she believes that a warrior's death will allow her to see Nola again, to be with the person she lost, to close the distance that death has put between them. Every time Cloth talks about finding a worthy opponent, every time she expresses excitement about a dangerous fight, what she is really expressing is the hope that this might be the one. This might be the battle where she finally falls, where she finally gets to go where Nola went. If you meet Cloth in enough locations throughout Hallownest, she appears during the fight against the Traitor Lord in the Queen's Gardens. She leaps into the battle, fights alongside you, and if the fight goes on long enough, the Traitor Lord kills her. Cloth dies in combat exactly the way she wanted, dealing a final blow to the Traitor Lord as she falls. And if you use the dream nail on her body afterward, you see her spirit, and she is happy. She is joyful. She has achieved what she came to Hallownest to achieve. She found her worthy battle. She fought bravely. She fell, and now she can be with Nola. Her dream nail dialogue is pure relief and contentment, the words of someone who has finally gotten what they wanted most. But here is the part that makes Cloth's story complicated and sad in a way that goes beyond the obvious. If you defeat the Traitor Lord before Cloth arrives, if you are too quick or too efficient, Cloth survives. She never gets her warrior's death. She never gets to join Nola. She ends up in Dirtmouth, alive and unfulfilled, expressing confusion about why she could not find the death she was looking for, settling into a quiet existence far from battle, far from glory, far from the reunion she wanted so badly. Many players consider Cloth surviving to be the sadder outcome, because survival means she has to keep living with the loss of Nola, has to keep carrying the grief, has to find a reason to exist that is not about dying. Cloth wanted to die, genuinely and sincerely, not out of depression or despair in the way we might understand it, but out of love, out of a belief that death was a door she could walk through to reach someone waiting on the other side. Whether she walks through that door or stays on this side depends on your actions, and there is no version of the outcome that is not, in some way, heartbreaking. Let your jaw unclench. Let your tongue rest against the bottom of your mouth. Let the small muscles around your eyes soften and go still. Cloth Story is about the things we carry after loss, about the way love can make death feel like a destination rather than an ending. Rest with that thought for a moment, and then let it go. You do not have to hold on to it. The broken vessel is a boss you fight in the ancient basin, and its story is told almost entirely without words. When you first encounter it, you find a dead vessel, one of your siblings, lying on the ground in a dark chamber deep underground. The vessel's shell is cracked, its body still, its journey clearly over. It escaped the abyss, like you, but it did not make it far. It died here, alone, in the dark. Another discarded child of the Pale King whose escape from the abyss was not enough to save it from Hallownest. And then the infection finds it. Orange light floods into the dead vessel's body, light seeds pouring in through the cracks in its shell, and the broken vessel stands up, reanimated, filled with the same infection that has consumed so much of Hallownest. It attacks you, not because it wants to, but because the infection is puppeting its dead body, using it as a weapon, filling the empty space where a mind should have been with nothing but rage and light. You fight a corpse, essentially. You fight the body of your dead sibling being worn like a suit by the very plague you're trying to stop. When you defeat the broken vessel, something remarkable happens. The infection drains out of its body, the light seeds scatter, and for one brief moment the vessel is itself again, or as close to itself as it can be while dead. It reaches out toward you, one arm extending as if trying to touch you, as if recognizing you, as if some trace of awareness or kinship or longing survived death and infection and everything else, and then it collapses, and it is over. If you return later with the dream nail, you can enter the broken vessel's dream and fight lost kin, a stronger version of the boss that represents the vessel as it was in life, before death, before infection, before everything went wrong. Lost kin is faster, more aggressive, more dangerous, a glimpse of what your sibling might have been if they had survived, the fighter they were when they were still alive and still themselves. When you defeat lost kin, the vessel's spirit appears, whole and unmarked, free of infection, free of damage. It bows to you silently, one vessel to another, sibling to sibling, and then it dissolves into essence and is gone. The game awards you an achievement called peace. The broken vessel was your sibling. They were born in the same place you were born, from the same parents, for the same purpose. They climbed out of the abyss like you did. They tried to survive like you did. But they did not make it. They died alone in the ancient basin, and then their body was desecrated by the infection, used as a puppet, forced to attack the only family they had left. And the only peace available to them came through being defeated in a dream, through being fought and broken one more time so that whatever remained of who they were could finally rest. That silent bow at the end, that wordless gesture of acknowledgement between two vessels who were never meant to have the capacity for acknowledgement, is one of the most quietly devastating moments in the entire game. Let your limbs become heavy, dense, as though they are slowly filling with warm water. Let them rest where they are. There is nowhere they need to be. The broken vessel found its peace. You are finding yours. Both processes take time, and both are worth the waiting. There is a knight named Ogrim who lives in the royal waterways, the sewers beneath the City of Tears, and who calls himself the Dung Defender. He is one of the 5 great knights who served the Pale King, the kingdom's most elite warriors, its finest protectors, the best of the best. And when you meet Ogrim, he is cheerful, he is enthusiastic, he laughs during your fight, congratulates you when you land good hits, treats the whole battle as a joyful test of skill between warriors. He is, on the surface, one of the happiest characters in Hallownest, a bug who genuinely enjoys what he does and who maintains his positive outlook despite the kingdom's fall. But Ogrim's cheerfulness is the thinnest layer of paint over the deepest well of grief, and if you look even slightly below the surface, you find something that will stay with you. Ogrim is the last of the 5 great knights. The other 4 are dead or gone. Dryar, fierce and loyal, died defending the White Lady's gardens from the Mantis traitors, her body found near the queen she swore to protect. Isma died protecting the kingdom, her body becoming part of the acidic defences in the waterways, her sacrifice literally dissolved into infrastructure. Hegemol disappeared, his massive armour stolen by a frightened maggot who put it on to protect its smaller siblings, his fate unknown, his identity erased. Zima, the Grey Mourner, survives, but has been broken by the loss of her lover, spending her days in secluded grief, unable to function as a knight, unable to do anything but mourn. Ogrim knows all of this. He knows his friends are gone. He knows his king is dead. He knows the kingdom he swore to protect has fallen. And he stays at his post anyway, maintains his duty anyway, keeps fighting and guarding and laughing anyway, because that is who he is, because that is what great knights do, because if he stops, if he lets the grief in, if he acknowledges the full weight of what he has lost, he might not be able to go on. If you use the dream nail on Ogrim, his thoughts betray what the cheerful exterior hides. He thinks about his fallen comrades. He promises them that he will protect the kingdom, that they will all meet again, that he has faith. He addresses the Pale King directly, promising reunion, promising that they will all be together once more. These are the thoughts of someone who talks to the dead, who maintains relationships with people who cannot respond, who fills the silence of his solitary posting with one-sided conversations with ghosts. If you find all the Great Knight statued and access the hidden chamber where you can fight the White Defender, Ogrim's dream form. The dream shows visions of the other knights, silhouettes of his lost friends, the people he loved and served beside and will never see again. Ogrim fights in that dream with everything he has, showing you what he was like in his prime, how strong he was when his friends were alive and his king was on the throne, and Hallownest was still worth protecting. And after the fight he reflects on his fallen comrades, on time passing, on being the last one standing. Ogrim chose to guard the sewers, not the throne room, not the palace, not any of the grand or prestigious locations in Hallownest. The sewers. The place no one visits, the place no one cares about, the place where the kingdom's waste collects. Ogrim guards the sewers because someone has to, because every part of Hallownest matters, because duty does not require glory or recognition, or even relevance. He guards the sewers and he stays cheerful and he talks to his dead friends in his thoughts, and he waits for a reunion that he must know somewhere deep inside is never coming. Ogrim is the last great knight, and his story is about how some people survive grief not by processing it, but by refusing to acknowledge it, by burying it under duty and cheerfulness, and the relentless forward motion of a life lived in service to something that no longer exists. Let your heart beat slow. Let it find the pace it keeps when you are almost asleep. That gentle, quiet rhythm that requires no effort and no attention. Ogrim guards his post. Your body guards its own rhythms. Both are faithful, both are constant, both continue without needing to be asked. The nailsmith lives in the City of Tears, a master craftsman who has spent his entire life pursuing a single goal, the forging of the perfect nail. When you meet him, he is alone, working at his forge, surrounded by the tools of a trade he's practiced for longer than he can remember. He offers to upgrade your weapon, improving it through stages, each upgrade requiring payment and rare materials. The nailsmith is passionate about his craft, speaking of nails with the reverence other bugs reserve for gods or kings, treating the act of forging a weapon as an art form, as the highest expression of what he is and what he values. As you bring him better materials, as he creates stronger nails, his excitement grows. He is being given the opportunity he has always wanted, the chance to push his skills to their absolute limit, to create something truly perfect. And when you bring him the final materials, when he forges the pure nail, his masterpiece, the weapon he has spent his entire life working toward, the nailsmith is transformed by the experience. He has achieved it. He has done the thing he was put on this earth to do. He has reached the absolute peak of his craft. And then, standing outside his workshop, he asks you to kill him. He asks you to strike him down with the very nail he just created. The pure nail, the perfect weapon, his life's work made manifest. He wants to feel the nail strike true, wants to experience his creation's perfection from the other side, wants to die at the moment of his greatest achievement rather than live past it into decline. The nailsmith believes, sincerely and completely, that nothing he does from this point forward will match what he has just accomplished, that his life's purpose is fulfilled, but continuing to live would mean producing lesser work, diminishing what he has achieved, watching his own legacy decay. He would rather die at the summit than walk back down the mountain. You have a choice. You can kill him, granting his request, ending his story at its highest point. If you do, his body falls into the waters below, and if you find it later and use the dream nail on it, his final thought is a single word: pure. He died fulfilled, complete, satisfied. Or you can refuse, you can walk away, you can deny him the death he asks for. And if you do that, the nailsmith is confused at first, lost, uncertain what to do with a life that he considered finished. But eventually he finds his way to Nailmaster Shio's hut in Greenpath, where he discovers painting, discovers a new art form, discovers that there is more to creativity and more to life than a single goal pursued to its end. He and Shio build something together, a companionship rooted in shared love of craft and beauty, and the nailsmith finds that the world is made of more than metal and weapons. The sadness in the nailsmith's story is not about the killing or the sparing. It is about the question he forces you to ask: is it better to end at your peak, or to risk the decline that comes after? Is identity so tied to achievement that the end of achievement means the end of identity? The nailsmith is not depressed. He is not suffering. He is genuinely fulfilled, genuinely at peace with asking to die. And that sincerity, that absolute conviction that his life is complete, is what makes the moment so uncomfortable and so sad. He is not asking you to save him from despair. He is asking you to honour the completion of his purpose, and whether you grant that request or deny it, you are making a decision about someone else's life and death that you're not fully qualified to make. Let your mind release whatever it has been turning over, whatever thought has been circling, whatever concern has been sitting at the edges of your awareness. Let it go the way the nailsmith let go of his forge, completely, with the knowledge that releasing something does not mean it was not important. Zama is the Grey Mourner, one of the 5 great knights, a warrior from a land far beyond Hallownest, who came to serve the Pale King and fell in love while she was here. She fell in love with a mantis, the child of the traitor lord himself, the very mantis who would later break from the tribe and accept the infection, betraying everything the mantis culture stood for. Their relationship was doubly forbidden. A foreign knight and the daughter of a traitor, two beings from different worlds whose bonds should not have existed but did, quietly and fiercely in the spaces between duty and expectation. And then Zayma's lover died, killed in the conflict between the loyal mantises and the traitors faction, killed in the violence that tore the mantis tribe apart and Zayma's world ended. When you find Zayma, she's living in seclusion in the resting ground, surrounded by grief so complete that it has become her entire identity. She's called the Grey Mourner because mourning is no longer something she does. It is something she is, her whole being organised around the absence of the person she loved. Zima asks you to do something for her, something she cannot do herself. She asks you to carry a delicate flower to her lover's grave in the Queen's Gardens. The flower is an offering, a last gift, a physical expression of love carried across distance and delivered to a place Zima cannot bring herself to visit. The flower is incredibly fragile. If you take any damage, the flower breaks. If you use a stag station, the flower breaks. If you die, the flower breaks. You must carry it through dangerous territory without being hurt, without taking shortcuts, without the safety nets the game normally provides. The journey with the flower is one of the most tense and careful experiences in the entire game. A long, slow walk through hostile environments where a single mistake means returning to Zayma, picking up another flower, and starting over. And this difficulty is the point. The difficulty is the offering. The care you must take, the patience required, the willingness to move slowly and deliberately through a world that is trying to hurt you. That is the expression of love Zayma cannot make herself. She's asking you to carry her grief carefully, to treat it as something precious, to deliver it safely to the place where it belongs. When you finally place the flower on the grave, there is no fanfare, no reward screen, no dramatic cutscene. Just a flower on a grave, and the knowledge that you have done something kind for someone who needed it, and the understanding that this is what love looks like when the person you love is gone, and the only thing left is the gesture, the offering, the act of remembering, performed not because it changes anything, but because it matters anyway. Let your eyelids become heavier than you can hold. Let them close on their own, not because you are forcing them, but because they are ready, because the weight of the day is pulling them down like petals on a flower that has been open long enough. Zima's grief is eternal, but yours does not have to be. Whatever you are carrying, you can set it down for the night. It will still be there in the morning if you need it, but right now you do not need it. Right now, you just need rest. The last stag is one of the loneliest characters in Hallownest, and his loneliness is the kind that does not announce itself, but sits quietly in the background of every interaction you have with him. He is a stag beetle, the last surviving member of a species that once served as Hallownest's transportation network, carrying passengers through a system of underground stations that connected the kingdom's regions. When you first find him, he is alone in a forgotten station, waiting in the dark for someone who will never come, because everyone who used to ride the stags is dead or gone, and all the other stags are dead too, and the stations have been abandoned and forgotten, and the routes that once hummed with activity and purpose are silent. When you open a stag station and call the last stag, he comes. He is surprised to have a passenger, surprised that anyone needs him, surprised that the old routes still exist and that someone wants to travel them. There is a cautiousness in his early dialogue, a disbelief that fades slowly into tentative hope, as you open more stations and call him more frequently. He begins to remember what it was like when the stations were busy, when stags took pride in their work, when transportation was a service and a purpose and a reason to keep moving. He becomes more energetic, more talkative, more like whoever he was before loneliness and abandonment wore him down. And then, if you find the hidden stag nest, you discover the truth he's been living with. The nest is a graveyard. The shells of dead stags fill the chamber, dozens of them. The remains of his entire species, his family, his community, everything he was connected to before it all ended. If you lead the last stag to this nest, he sees it, and he reacts with a sadness that is dignified and quiet and absolute. He now knows for certain what he probably suspected all along. He is the last. There are no other stags. There will never be other stags. His species ends with him, alone, travelling routes that lead nowhere, serving a kingdom that is dead, maintained by his own refusal to stop. The last stag does not stop. That is the thing. He does not give up. He does not crawl into the nest and die beside his kind. He goes back to the stations, goes back to the routes, goes back to carrying you wherever you need to go. He keeps working because that is what stags do, because purpose does not require an audience, because service does not require gratitude, because some creatures continue not because they have a reason to, but because stopping is simply not something they know how to do. The last stag is the saddest kind of loyal. He is loyal to an idea that no longer has a context, faithful to a function that no longer has a system, devoted to a role that no longer has a world to exist in. And he keeps going anyway, because the alternative is to stop. And if he stops, then the stags are truly finished, and as long as he is moving, as long as he is travelling the old routes, something of what the stags were continues to exist. Let your body settle deeper into stillness. Let the last traces of tension drain out of your hands, your feet, the small muscles along your spine. The last stag keeps moving. You can be still. You have earned this stillness. Let it hold you. This seer is an ancient moth who lives in the resting grounds, one of the last of her tribe, the keeper of dreams and memories in a kingdom that has forgotten what it once remembered. She gives you the dream nail, the weapon that allows you to read thoughts and enter dreams, and she asks you to collect essence, the luminous residue of dreams, from the spirits and memories you encounter throughout Hallownest. She is old, tired, and deeply sad, and her sadness is not about Hallownest or the infection or the Pale King. Her sadness is about her own people, the Moth Tribe, and what they did to their god. The Moth Tribe worshipped the Radiance before the Pale King arrived. The Radiance was their light, their purpose, their identity as a people. She gave them warmth and meaning and a place in the world. And then the Pale King came, offering expanded minds, expanded consciousness, the gift of thought and civilization, and the moths turned away from the Radiance. They forgot her. Not gradually, not reluctantly, but completely, as though she had never existed, as though everything she had given them meant nothing. The seer remembers this. She remembers her tribe's betrayal, remembers the god they abandoned, remembers the cost of that abandonment. The infection that is destroying Hallownest, the plague that has killed so many, the catastrophe that defines the entire game, is the Radiance's response to being forgotten. The Radiance is not evil. She is desperate. She's a god whose worshippers abandoned her, who was erased from memory, who was slowly fading into nothing, and who chose to fight back rather than disappear quietly. The infection is her scream, her refusal to be forgotten, her insistence on existing, even if existence means madness and destruction, and the ruin of the kingdom that replaced her. The seer carries this knowledge, this understanding that her own tribe's betrayal caused the catastrophe that is destroying everything. She's the last witness to a crime that no one else remembers, the keeper of a truth that no one else wants to hear. And when you bring her enough essence, when you have collected enough dreams and defeated enough spirits, the seer completes her purpose. She gives you the awoken dream nail, a more powerful version of the weapon, and then she fades. She ascends, dissolves, joins her tribe wherever moths go when there are no more moths left. Her last words are an acknowledgement that the old light, the radiance, was real and important and deserved better than being forgotten. And then she is gone, and the resting grounds are a little emptier, and the history she carried disappears with her, because there is no one left to tell it. Let your thoughts thin out like mist over water, present but barely there, more feeling than substance, more impression than thought. The seer faded because her purpose was complete. Your purpose right now is to rest. Let that purpose carry you the way the seer let hers carry her, gently, without resistance, toward whatever comes next. The White Lady made a choice that she cannot unmake, and she lives with it every day in a garden where she has bound herself with her own roots to ensure she cannot do anything else. She is the Pale King's queen, the mother of every vessel, the being whose body produced thousands of children who were thrown into the abyss to die. She participated in this willingly, or at least knowingly, understanding what the plan required, understanding that most of her children would not survive, understanding that the creation of a perfect vessel demanded the sacrifice of imperfect ones. And now she sits in the Queen's gardens, wrapped in her own roots, sealed away from the world, speaking softly about what was done and what might still be done and what cannot be changed. When you meet the White Lady, she is gentle. She calls the vessels born of God and void, acknowledges them as her children, recognizes you as one of them. She speaks of the Pale King with something complicated, something that might be love or grief or the space where those two things overlap. She does not defend what they did. She does not fully condemn it either. She simply states what was, what is, and what might be. The White Lady bound herself in the Queen's gardens as an act of self-imposed penance, or perhaps self-imposed restraint. She speaks of a unity within herself that she fears, suggesting that without her bindings, she might create more children, might start the whole terrible cycle again, might produce more vessels for a purpose that has already failed. The bindings are protection, not punishment. She is protecting the world from herself, from her own fertility, from the possibility that she might do again what she has already done. The White Lady gave you half of the King's old charm, the key to the abyss, the path to becoming whole. She did this knowing what it means, knowing that it might lead to the Void Heart and the true ending, knowing that her child might succeed where the chosen child failed. When you speak to her after acquiring the Void Heart, she calls you my child with what sounds like genuine affection and genuine pride, and there is something in that moment that is almost unbearably sad. A mother expressing love for a child she created to be empty, a child she helped throw into the abyss, a child who somehow survived and came back and might now save the kingdom that tried to kill them. The White Lady is complicit in atrocity. She's also a mother who loved her children, or who came to love them after the fact, or who always loved them and allowed them to die anyway because she believed it was necessary. The contradictions do not resolve. The guilt does not end, the bindings do not release. She sits in her garden, gentle and sad and bound, and she waits for whatever comes next. Let your body become so relaxed that you forget where it ends and the bed begins. Let the boundary dissolve. You are held. You are safe. Nothing is required of you. The White Lady waits in her garden. You rest in yours. Marissa is a ghost who sings in an empty theatre in the Pleasure House in the City of Tears. She was a performer once, a singer whose voice drew crowds, whose art brought beauty and culture to Hallownest's capital. People came to hear her sing, filled the seats, applauded, lived their lives with her music in the background, and then the infection came, and the audiences stopped coming, and eventually Marissa died, and her ghost remained, singing to empty seats in a building that no one visits anymore. When you find Marissa, she's on stage, singing, and her voice is part of the ambient sound of the Pleasure House, a melody that drifts through the empty corridors and abandoned rooms. She's overjoyed to have an audience, even an audience of one, even a silent vessel, who cannot applaud or speak, or tell her that her singing is beautiful. She sings for you because singing is what she is, because art does not require an audience to have value, because the act of creating beauty is its own justification, even when there is no one left to appreciate it. If you use the dream nail on Marissa, she disappears, giving you a single essence, and the pleasure house falls silent, and the ghost who was singing to empty seats is gone, and the music stops, and many players report feeling a sharp pang of guilt for having silenced the last beautiful thing in a dead building. Marissa's a tiny detail in a vast game, a character you can find or miss entirely, a ghost with no impact on the plot or the gameplay or any of the systems that drive Hollow Knight forward. But she represents something important about Hallownest, something the game returns to again and again. The things that are lost when a kingdom falls are not just military power and political structure and economic productivity. The things that are lost are songs and performers and the audiences who loved them, the culture that made a kingdom more than just a collection of tunnels and buildings, the beauty that made it worth living in. Marissa singing to empty seats is Hallownest's eulogy, performed by someone who does not know the funeral is over because no one told her, because there is no one left to tell her, because the last audience member is a silent knight who cannot speak and a player who can only listen. Let the silence become comfortable. Let it be the kind of silence that exists after music ends, not empty but full, not absence but presence, the space where something beautiful was and where the memory of it remains. Marissa's song fades, your wakefulness fades. Both give way to something softer. Elderbug is an old bug who sits on a bench in Dirtmouth, the small village above Hallownest, and he is the first friendly face you see when you begin the game. He has watched Dirtmouth empty. He has watched his neighbours leave, one by one, descending into Hallownest and never returning, or simply walking away into the lands beyond, giving up on a town that had nothing left to offer. Elderbug stayed because Dirtmouth is his home, because leaving felt like admitting it was over, because someone should remember what this place was even if no one else does. He sits on his bench and he looks at the well that leads down into Hallownest, and he warns you, gently, that everyone who goes down there either dies or comes back wrong. Elderbug is not a warrior. He's not a scholar or a king or a vessel or a knight. He is just an old bug on a bench, and his sadness is the most ordinary kind of sadness in the game, the sadness of watching your world shrink. His neighbours are gone. His town is dying. The travellers who used to pass through have stopped coming. He sits alone on his bench day after day, watching nothing happen in a place where things used to happen, remembering a version of Dirtmouth that no longer exists. And when you arrive, when you come up from Hallownest alive and in one piece, Elderbug is happy to see you. Quietly, genuinely happy. Not because you're doing anything for him, not because you're saving his town or fixing his problems, but simply because you are alive and you came back. Someone came back. After all the people who went down and never returned, someone finally returned, and that is enough to make Elderbug's day, to give him a small piece of hope, to remind him that the world has not completely stopped. As you progress and other characters begin arriving in Dirtmouth, Elderbug comments on the changes with cautious optimism. The town is coming back to life, slowly, tentatively, and Elderbug notices every new arrival, every reopened building, every sign that Dirtmouth might be more than a dying village after all. He does not take credit for this. He does not ask for recognition. He just sits on his bench and watches and takes quiet comfort in the evidence that staying was not a mistake, that his faith in this place was not misplaced, that home is worth waiting for even when home has very little left to offer. Elderbug's kindness, his ordinary unwavering decency in a world that has lost most of its decency, is the emotional anchor of Hollow Knight. He is the character who makes Dirtmouth feel like home, who makes your returns to the surface feel like coming back to someone who cares, who reminds you that not everything in this game is about gods and plagues and the failures of kings. Some things are about an old bug on a bench who stayed when everyone else left, and who is happy to see you, simply and completely, every time you come back. Let yourself be held by whatever is holding you right now, bed or couch or chair, the way Elderbug is held by his bench, faithfully, reliably, without needing to be asked. You're safe here. You have somewhere to come back to. That is worth something. That is worth a great deal. There is Grubfather in the Forgotten Crossroads who asks you to rescue his children. Small larvae called grubs who have been trapped in glass jars and scattered throughout Hallownest. As you find grubs and break their jars, they return to their father, and he is grateful, happily bouncing, rewarding you with items and geo, a simple side quest with a simple premise: rescue the children, return them to their parent, receive thanks. It feels good. It feels like one of the few uncomplicatedly kind things you can do in Hallownest, a straightforward act of rescue and reunion, and then you rescue all 46 grubs, and you return to the Grubfather, and something has changed. The Grubfather is bloated, distended, transformed. The grubs are gone. Empty cocoons surround him. The visual implication is stark and disturbing. The Grubfather appears to have consumed his children. The cheerful, bouncing parent who thanked you for every rescued child seems to have eaten them all. The game never explains this directly. It never tells you what happened. But it drops clues. The achievement you receive for rescuing all the grubs is called Metamorphosis. The charm you receive, Grubberfly's Elegy, is described as containing the gratitude of grubs who will move to the next stage of their lives. And if you stand near the bloated Grubfather, you can hear sounds coming from inside him, the happy cooing of grubs, alive and content, apparently undergoing some kind of transformation within their father's body. The Grubfather is not eating his children. He is serving as a living cocoon, a chrysalis, facilitating their metamorphosis from grubs into grubberflies, the next stage of their species' life cycle. But even with this understanding, even knowing that the grubs are alive and transforming and will eventually emerge as something new, the visual is profoundly uncomfortable. A father swallowing his children to help them grow is a kind of love that looks identical to a kind of horror. a sacrifice that cannot be distinguished from a crime except by context, an act of transformation that is physically identical to an act of consumption. The Grubfather's story is unsettling because it operates in the gap between appearance and reality, because it forces you to sit with the discomfort of not knowing whether what you're looking at is beautiful or terrible, because it reminds you that in nature, in Hallownest, in life, the most loving acts sometimes look the most monstrous from the outside. Let your breathing become so natural that you stop noticing it, the way you stop noticing the sound of rain after it has been falling long enough. Your body knows what to do. Your lungs know their rhythm. You can release the last thread of conscious attention and let everything run on its own, the way it was designed to, the way it always does when you finally stop trying to manage it. The radiance is the antagonist of Hollow Night, the source of the infection, the being whose orange light turns bugs into violent husks. She is the final boss. She's the force behind every tragedy we have talked about tonight, and she is, in her own way, one of the saddest characters in the game, because the Radiance did not start as a villain. She started as a god who was loved, and she became a plague because she was forgotten. Before the Pale King arrived in the lands that would become Hallownest, the Moth tribe worshipped the Radiance. She was their deity, their source of light and warmth and purpose. The Moths built their culture around her, devoted their lives to her, found meaning in her existence the way all worshippers find meaning in their gods. And then the Pale King came, a being of a different kind of a light, offering something the Radiance never had: expanded minds, higher thought, civilization. The Moths turned to the Pale King. They accepted his gift of consciousness, his promise of a greater existence, and in doing so they forgot the Radiance. Not slowly, not reluctantly. They forgot her completely, as if she had never existed, as if the centuries of worship and devotion and meaning meant nothing at all. For a god, being forgotten is not just painful, it is existential annihilation. Gods exist through belief, through worship, through the minds that hold them. When the Moth stopped worshipping the Radiance, stopped thinking about her, stopped passing down her stories, she began to die. Not physically, not in a way you can see or fight, but in the way that a fire dies when you stop feeding it, slowly, inevitably, fading into nothing. The infection is the Radiance's refusal to fade. It is not an attack, it is a scream. It is the desperate act of a being fighting for the right to exist, forcing her way back into the minds that abandoned her, reclaiming the worship that was stolen from her, insisting on being remembered even if remembering means madness and violence and the destruction of everything the Pale King built. From the Radiance's perspective, she is not the villain. The Pale King is the villain, the usurper who stole her followers, who took what was hers, who offered something shiny and new and erased her in the process. The infection is self-defense. The infection is justice. The infection is the only tool she has left to prevent her own erasure. The tragedy of the Radiance is that she is both victim and villain, both sympathetic and monstrous, a god whose reasonable grief led to unreasonable destruction. She was forgotten, and the forgetting was cruel, and her response to that cruelty destroyed an entire kingdom and everyone in it. The Pale King stole her worshippers. She stole their minds. Neither act is forgivable, and both are understandable, and between them lies a kingdom of innocent bugs who got caught in a war between gods and suffered for it. When you defeat the Radiance in the true ending, when you drag her down into void and silence her light forever, you're not just ending the infection, You're completing the erasure the moths began. You're finishing what the Pale King started. You're killing a god for the crime of refusing to be forgotten, and whether that is heroic or tragic depends entirely on whose story you are telling. Let the warmth of wherever you are resting spread through you like something slow and liquid, filling the spaces between your thoughts, softening the edges of everything still sharp. The radiance raged against forgetting. You are choosing it, deliberately, peacefully, letting the details of the day fade, letting the facts and the stories and the sadness dissolve into the formless dark that comes before dreams. Forgetting, tonight, is not a crime. Tonight it is a kindness. Hera the Beast was the Queen of Deepnest, a kingdom older and stranger than Hallownest, a dark web of tunnels and caverns filled with spiders and creatures that do not need light or civilization to thrive. Hera was powerful, independent, and she ruled her domain with the fierce authority of someone who had never needed anyone else's help. And when the Pale King came to her, desperate for dreamers, desperate for someone to seal themselves in eternal sleep to maintain the Hollow Knight's prison, Hera saw an opportunity. She agreed to become a dreamer, to sacrifice her consciousness, to sleep forever in order to maintain the seal. But she did not do it for duty or devotion or the logical acceptance of necessity. She did it for a child. Hera agreed to become a dreamer only if the Pale King gave her an heir, a daughter, someone to carry Deepnest's legacy forward after Hera was gone. The Pale King agreed, and Hornet was born, the child of two kingdoms, the daughter of a bargain made between rulers, a girl who exists because her mother traded her entire life for the chance to create one. Hera never raised Hornet. She could not. The bargain required her to enter the sleep, to become a dreamer, to close her eyes and never open them again. She held her daughter, perhaps. She named her, perhaps. She looked at her, certainly at least once, at the child she had traded everything for, the child she would never see walk or speak or grow or fight. And then Hera went to sleep and she never woke up, and Hornet grew up without a mother, carrying the weight of knowing that she existed because her mother chose not to. When you arrive at Hera's chamber to break her seal, to kill her in her sleep, Hornet does not stop you. She stands aside. She knows it is necessary. She knows that the dreamer's sacrifice has run its course, that the seal is failing, that a new solution is needed. But knowing does not erase the weight of what is happening. You're killing Hornet's mother. You're ending the life of a queen who gave up everything, her kingdom, her consciousness, her future, for the existence of a single child. And Hornet lets you do it because she understands, because her mother raised her through absence to understand exactly this kind of sacrifice, because being the daughter of Hera the Beast means knowing that sometimes the people you love have to die for the world to continue. Hera's story is the quietest kind of sad, the kind that does not demand attention or sympathy, but simply exists. A fact about a woman who made a choice and lived, or rather slept with its consequences. She wanted a daughter, she got one. She never saw her grow up. That is the whole story, and it is enough. Let everything that is not rest fall away from you now, the way leaves fall from a branch in autumn, not violently, not suddenly, but with the gentle inevitability of something that has been holding on long enough and is finally ready to let go. You have held on long enough tonight. The stories are told, the facts are shared. The sadness has been spoken into the dark, and now the dark can have it, and you can have your rest. Hallownest is full of sadness, but it is also full of something else, something harder to name, something that exists in the space between tragedy and beauty, between loss and the memory of what was lost. Every character in this kingdom carries something: a grief, a duty, a memory, a hope, an attachment to a version of the world that no longer exists. The Pale King carried the weight of his choice to sacrifice his children. The Hollow Knight carried the weight of being the chosen one who was never quite empty enough. Myla carried a song that became a dirge. Quirrell carried a teacher's gift of forgetting. Cloth carried a love that she followed into death. Ogrim carries the memory of friends he will never see again. The nailsmith carried a single purpose that consumed his entire existence. Zama carries a flower's worth of grief. The last stag carries roots that lead nowhere. The seer carried a tribe's forgotten crime. The White Lady carries the knowledge of what she allowed to happen to her children. Marissa carries a song that no one is left to hear. Elderbug carries the faith that staying was the right choice. And you, the knight, carry all of it, all of their stories, all of their grief, all of their hope, because you are the one who met them, who talked to them, who listened, who was there. The saddest fact about Hollow Knight might not be any single story or any single character. It might be the cumulative weight of all of them. The understanding that Hallownest was a real place in the way that fictional places become real through the detail and care with which they are constructed, and that it fell, and that the falling took everyone with it, the guilty and the innocent, the heroic and the ordinary, the kings and the miners and the knights and the stags and the singers and the bugs who just wanted to sit on a bench and watch their town recover. Hallownest fell, and when it fell, it took every kind of life with it, and the game asks you to walk through the wreckage and pay attention to what was lost, to notice the details, to care about the characters, to understand that a kingdom is not a government or an army, or a set of caverns, but a collection of individual lives, each one complete, each one important, each one worth mourning. Let the stories fade. Let Hallownest become distant, a place you visited in your mind, a kingdom you heard about while you were falling asleep. The sadness is real, but it is also contained, held within the boundaries of a game, a story, a set of words spoken in the dark while you rest. You can hold it lightly. You can let it go. You can carry it with you into sleep and let it dissolve into whatever dreams come. Or you can release it here, at the edge of consciousness, and wake up with nothing but a vague sense of having heard something sad and beautiful and worth hearing. The knight walks through Hallownest, silent and determined. The Hollow Knight suffers in chains, waiting for someone to end it. The Pale King sleeps on his throne, crown fallen, kingdom lost. Myla sings a broken song in Crystal Peak. Quirrell's nail stands upright beside a blue lake. Cloth rests with Nola, or Cloth sits in Dirtmouth wishing she could. The broken vessel bows and dissolves into peace. Ogrim laughs in the sewers and grieves in his dreams. The nailsmith forges or falls or paints, depending on what you chose. Zima mourns in the resting grounds, waiting for a flower that might never arrive. The last stag travels his empty routes. The seer fades into light. The White Lady sits bound in her garden. Marissa sings to an empty theatre. Elderbug waits on his bench. And you, lying here, breathing slowly, letting go of the world, drift towards sleep the way all these characters drift through their stories, carried by something they cannot see, pulled towards something they cannot name, held by the quiet certainty that even in a kingdom full of sadness, rest is possible, peace is available, and the act of lying still in the dark and letting consciousness fade is not surrender, but completion, not ending, but transition. The same kind of passage the grubs make inside the Grub Father. The same kind of passage Quirrell made at the Blue Lake. The same kind of passage the seer made when she dissolved into essence, a movement from one state to another that does not need to be understood to be trusted. Sleep now. Let Hallownest hold its own grief. It has been doing it for a long time, and it does not need your help tonight. The characters will continue their stories. The kingdom will continue its slow, quiet decline. The infection will burn. The radiance will rage. The vessels will wander. The dreamers will sleep their eternal sleep. And you will sleep your own sleep, earned and ordinary and precious, the kind of sleep that does not require a kingdom to justify it, that does not need to mean anything. That simply is what it is. Rest. Recovery. The body and mind doing what they do when you finally stop asking them to do anything else. The kingdom falls. The kingdom endures. The kingdom exists in the space between memory and forgetting, between the game and the player, between wakefulness and sleep. And in that space, in that twilight, in that gentle, uncertain place where stories end and dreams begin, you can rest. You can let go. You can close your eyes if they are not closed already. You can stop listening if you want to, or you can let these last words carry you the rest of the way, over the edge, down into the dark, into the warm, still nothing that comes before morning. Good night. Sleep well. Let the saddest things in Hallownest become the quietest things, and let the quiet carry you away. The night walks on, the kingdom sleeps, and so, finally peacefully, completely do you.